Welcome to the Shibe for Change podcast, because good people deserve better.
So, Kayla, thank you again so much for sitting down with me. Thank you for your interest in Marseilles.
Absolutely.
And tell me what has motivated you to get involved politically in the city of Marseilles.
I come from a social work background, and I've focused a lot on equality and diversity, and those things really intrigue me. I've been somebody who has been silenced or disadvantaged or not allowed to speak up, and I find a lot of, fulfillment in helping people have a voice and making sure that everyone's being considered. And I care a lot about fairness. And there was a person on Facebook when I was advocating who said, if you have such a problem with it, then why don't you do something about it? And he was right.
Yeah, that really speaks to me. You know, there is, as a union leader, I always encourage my members to separate unprofitable anger from focused response. Everyone can be angry, but what are we going to do about what we see as injustices, as people are being treated unfairly? And certainly, this past term, but even before this past term, people have not been treated with equal weights and measures. You know, they're constitutional issues. There's been very clear viewpoint discrimination. You know, one person can come in and criticize to their heart's content, another person is gavelled. The city's social media will kind of cherry pick what makes it look good or what makes certain arguments look like they're in the right and others in the wrong. And I think to me, a lot of this goes back to the building, because I made it a point to say that, like in most every other thing, there are two legitimate sides to the question. We did have an older building. This was a much nicer, newer building. We have a large, empty Nabisco. We didn't want a second large, empty building. However, we also were engaging in tone deafness. We were buying a palace for ourselves with money that wasn't ours. We were taking a property off of the tax rolls that provided revenue to schools and the city. We were depriving a would-be commercial tenant of the opportunity to get some economic stimulus going. So it wasn't that there was only my side, there were two sides, but I wanted both to be heard. And then when the vote came down and then they followed that up with a social media ban, it's like, that is just gross. That is not the way that people should run a local government. You know, just in my own profession, I have had my job threatened on multiple occasions by elected officials, appointed officials, and an employee. And it's been extraordinarily stressful. And I've never responded in kind. You know, if I have made it a point to tread extraordinarily lightly on the doings of City Hall. I make it a point, I still have not received a key to my office at City Hall, because in looking at the investigation into what happened in 2022 and the follow-up, I want no part of that. I don't want to be in a position where I can be accused of acting like that. I don't want to be an enabler of behavior that the investigation found happened. There's just a lot that's very, very wrong there. So I do all that to say that if we have a level playing field, and if we're open and we're transparent and we say, hey, let's chew on this. We don't have to come to the same conclusion. You know, a lot of friends of mine said, Mike, you're silly. You should control the riverfront. There should be a city building there. Other friends of mine said, how dare you buy that palace? You know, the bride at Ziggy's called me hey, it's the $3 million man. I'm like, no, that wasn't me. But anyway, I think it's good to have good-spirited debate. I think that's healthy. We don't all have to agree, and that's why I'm so adamant that we should be an example to the rest of the country, that we don't have to divide over conservative liberal. We don't have to divide over the stuff that makes people hate each other in Washington and Springfield. We all want clean air and clean water. We all want roads patched. We all want money spent intelligently and with an awareness that it's not ours.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something that can appeal to anybody. And so I just, in really hearing the call for fairness, like here. And and not to engage in kind of, I suppose the grievance airing, but the lawsuit that was filed by the mayor and employees, that had a very chilling impact on people feeling that they could express themselves. And that has no place in the United States. You should be able to, unless there's something called the imminent lawlessness test. I understand why you can't say, in 5 minutes, let's all go burn this house down. I understand why that's not legal. But hey, I don't like what the government's doing. That's something that people should be very free to say in either direction. And I look forward to people speaking freely and saying, Mike, I think you got this one wrong. Because that's okay. Yeah. That's part of, I think that's part of being in a collaborative local government effort.
Yes, I agree. I really love that you said you want us to be an example of the way government should be run. Like I don't know, I get like butterflies in my tummy just thinking about that, because I think that's really what pulled me in. The idea of like doing something about it. I was like, who am I? Sometimes I'm a little too humble, and because I come from humble beginnings, and I have a lot going on, and I know it would be just an extra thing, and also like the fear of like, what are people going to think of me? And I'm an actual, just a normal person, but the idea of like really actually pushing for equality and like healthy communication and challenging beliefs in each other. And, also I do want to talk to, watching what you were going through, I thought there's no way this is what's happening, because my relationship with the mayor was very, superficial or whatever. But I don't know if I should say, I can't diagnose the man, but his tendencies were appalling, and it was scary the way he was behaving. I thought there's no way that he's actually silencing someone who's voicing concern. So what you're telling me is that someone's trying to speak up for us or is showing concern, and it's just not heard. And to me, it's not just a Marseilles issue. It is worldwide, in normal conversations, in normal relationships, not just in government, in management in general, jobs, bosses who treat people like, because I'm in a position of power, I can treat you any way, and that power inhibits you from being able to react or respond in any sort of way. It's abusive, and people in general are expected just to take that, and I can't stand that. I think that the answer is systems level thinking, where I don't take, and I will openly say, I think both sides, the left and the right, have good and bad about them. I think we need to think smart when it comes to money, because how are we going to have anything else if we don't think smart when it comes to money? But we also need to consider the impact on the environment, the people, and the wellness also. Is everyone being considered? Is all voices, have they come to the table? And I would love for Marseilles to be like a safe haven. I would love for Marseilles to be a place where they don't have to worry about getting dug into the ground financially because someone has a, what did you call it, a $3 million mansion.
Yeah, well, yeah, someone called it the Taj Mahal in Beck. But it's tone deaf.
Yeah.
So in my job that I won't reference by name, I walk on Illinois Street 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And I can see, and as metal is poking out of Illinois Street, I can see in the distance the palace. And how tone deaf is that? It's, and this is where I think, talking about how this sort of transcends left and right, the people who currently run Marseilles would be considered generally of the political right, yet they spent money that we didn't have. So what's so conservative about that? And it's not, and again, I don't think we have to think in those terms, because we all want money to be spent wisely. We all want, and I think that the average person, one thing that delights me about meeting people in Marseilles, just through both my life as a local politician and through my work, is that a lot of really cool people just have different ways of thinking of things. And it can be the, it can be a preacher like myself, it can be a plumber, it can be an electrician, it could be a lawyer, it could be a social worker, it could be someone who's retired. People have really a lot to offer, and a way of thinking that maybe I wouldn't naturally think that way. Like I'll give you a great example. To me is someone said, Mike, you don't have to fix every problem. You seem to have a hero complex. And that person, let's call her, well, if you want, that person was absolutely right. That person that absolutely spoke to me. It's like, you know what? And not only did I hear that, but it also made me consider, am I neglecting my family because I think I have to fix everything?
Oh, no, wait.
Am I neglecting my mental health because I feel like I have to fix everything? And no, I don't. And by the way, we're running because we want to change Marseilles, but things are more important. To me, it's the F's. Faith. I'm an outspoken Christian. I'm unapologetic. Family. I love my family. Fitness. I need to lose a couple of pounds. Finances. I have bills to pay. There are things that transcend local government, but let's make local government a partner. Let's make local government the kind of thing that comes alongside our residents and encourages them to excellence.
Yeah.
Whether and not the in crowd or the out crowd. Traditionally public service jobs, the trade-off was they really didn't make more than the median in the community, but they had perhaps better job security or better benefits. When we consider our incomes, our salaries for our employees, we should consider, yes, we want to pay them real money, but we also don't want to look down on the people who don't work for the government who are paying those salaries. If we find that people on the inside are living higher qualities of life than our residents, that's a problem. I was just in Washington, D.C. for union work, and two of the wealthiest counties in the country are Fairfax County in Virginia and Montgomery County in Maryland, because there's so much money to be made, and I think we shouldn't do that here. Yeah. I think we should be much more of we are representative of the people that we serve. And so we should have a very similar quality of life. That's why I'm so excited that our team, and I am unapologetic, we are a team. Like I think right now the problem is too much king thinking. Yeah. Let's not have kings. Let's not have a king here. Let's not have a king in Springfield. Let's not have a king in Washington, D.C. But I'm only worried about here, because I'm running for mayor of Marseilles. But one mayor can't do anything without a team behind them. And that's certainly been true as a commissioner. I had the idea because Morris and Ottawa already had it. Let's have a rain barrel program. And you'd have thought that I suggested we all go home and I don't know what, commit something imminently lawless. It was incredible that there was more scrutiny of that, to my thinking, than a 715 annexation project with 13 different NIMBY projects. That could be a data center campus, that could be fuel storage and manufacturing, that could be electric transmission. It seems, it was just fascinating to me that I had an idea of rain barrels and that's, anyway.
To be fair, nobody really was given the chance to know about the annexation. What was it, about a day prior? Before we were allowed to even know anything was happening, nobody even had a chance to vote no.
Well, so what they did was to my thinking, the legal minimum. So they did they posted the public hearing, and they did that in the requisite number of days. But they only hosted one public hearing. They did it at 4:00, I believe, on a Wednesday, when the great bulk of people were at work. And there was so much wrong with this that it sort of boggles the mind. if you go a year before the annexation, when the people in the Timber Edge subdivision, I always put an S and I shouldn't, it was the Timber Edge subdivision, when they were being approached, the city actually put on the website, we're unaware of any plans.
Okay.
That just wasn't true. Now you can say, well, it's technically true because we had not yet signed an agreement with the developer or whatever. But the fact of the matter was the city was aware that there was a multi-billion-dollar interest buying property. You can't pretend, I have no idea what's going on. Maybe there'll be development, maybe not. What do I know? That's just, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I wanted to be exceedingly careful in how we were going to go forward with any annexation agreement because of that misdirection at best. And I'll call it misdirection. That's the most charitable way of looking at it. The city misdirected what was going on. So a year later, we owed the people more than one public hearing. And we only gave them one public hearing at 4 o'clock on a workday. That was just simply the wrong thing to do. Had we had 2 or 3 public hearings and I was still the only no vote, we would have at least been heard. I mean, that's where you go into the idea of treat people fairly, actually respect the dignity of the individuals.
Absolutely.
And then when I went to the planning commission because data centers and data center campuses are what you'd call a NIMBY project, not in my backyard. They often are placed in areas where people lack the resources to fight back. And I brought that up. And then I was characterized as calling the people poor and uneducated. It's not what I said. I said that we're being taken advantage of, which is the exact opposite, but people can hear what they want to. And by the way, I appreciate those who call me out because I never want to look down on people. I welcome those that say, Mike, I think you got that wrong, but I respectfully reply, I think they were very wrong in how they characterized my good faith concerns. So anyway, so back to, there was a minimal notice that was given that was found by the court to be in keeping with Open Meetings Act. I think it violated the spirit of the Open Meetings Act. If the judge found it within the letter of the law, well and good. I mean, I do deliver I'm not an attorney, so I want to be careful not to litigate. But the argument that I made before the city council, and I make again, is that was the wrong way to go about it. Yeah. Whether it was technically within the legal parameters, it was just the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
We owed the residents more than one hearing, and we owed them a hearing when they could get to us. And it's kind of like the building. I'm not saying there were zero advantages. We do owe $9.5 million. We have $9.5 million in general obligation bonds. This was a way to help pay for that. This would provide temporary economic development. I don't doubt that either. However, most everywhere data centers have gone, people have felt them disastrous.
Yeah.
I reached out to people in Arizona. I reached out to people in Virginia, and they said, whatever you have to do, throw yourself in front of this. This is not a good scene. And something else that I brought up is that we have a very large brownfield. The old Nabisco building is really quite hazardous. Well, if we put up a data center campus, a whole bunch of them, and in 40 years and 20 years those buildings are obsolete, now we have a whole bunch of brownfields. Now we have a whole bunch of contaminants that are just sitting there in buildings that we can't use. Now, on the short term, there would be a construction boom, and it would definitely help the service industry that's here locally, but long-term jobs in data centers are pretty minimal.
I think my biggest concern with data centers is that they continue to put them in fields where it's farmland. We don't need that. It's kind of the same thing as let's cut down all the trees and not consider the oxygen that we get from the trees. Again, systems level thinking. I appreciate data centers. I personally will admit that I use ChatGPT professionally and responsibly, though. It's definitely a huge debate. But I personally would have voted no, and I was frustrated because I didn't even hear about this until last minute. I wanted to be present but couldn't because it was so last minute, and so I didn't get a chance to voice my concern. And it really just it felt like I was slighted. And for me, it's should our government or in my ideal world, I've never felt this way about local government. But I want to feel protected. I want to feel like my local government is loyal, that they would have my back. Like, you know, if I wasn't there, they would have my back because I'm one of theirs. You know what I mean? Like, these are my people. These are the people that I work for. You know, thinking of the Timber's Edge thing, it's like, you're not going to go do anything because these are my people. I will go to them and talk to them and see if they're interested, but I'm not going to allow you. It's almost like the same integrity as someone asks you for your friend's phone number. I'm not going to give that to you because they deserve to have that boundary, that security. Without these kinds of behaviors, we don't have that sense of safety. So how are we going to have a sense of community? You know, my understanding in social work and mental health is there's the hierarchy of needs. Have you heard of this?
Absolutely. Yeah, Maslow. If your physical
Yes.
needs aren't met, you're not going to be...
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so if we have a government who doesn't care about our finances, our physical environment, we're not ever going to thrive. I want to see this community be able to thrive. I want to see this community work their way up the pyramid, you know? And with the type of government we have now, at least, because the federal government's awful too, at least here in Marseilles, there's a little bit of break from that. You know what I mean?
Tremendously so.
Yeah.
Tremendously so. And I think that so much of it is process, even over policy. It's that we weren't listening to the residents.
Yes.
And you know, to my thinking is, if I feel as if I've been heard, I'll feel a lot better about how the outcome is, even if I'm not on the winning side of it.
Yes.
But once again, just to beat this horse, it's down, I'm going to keep kicking it. 4 o'clock on a work day, that was just the wrong thing to do. We are a working class community where I'm proud to say a lot of us work for a living, you know, and that means that we might not be available at 4 o'clock on a work day. And they would not allow participation if you weren't there in the room, and it was a Wednesday. It wasn't, you know, it just simply was, not only was it to my thinking the wrong thing to do, but it even led to a very inferior deal. I think if you had 3 or 4 public meetings and they still went for it, I think we would have actually done better than we did as far as what the city got.
You're saying at least make more money from it.
Well, but yes. So it would have been the right thing to do by the residents, and it would have had a better outcome for the coffers of Marseilles. Now, I frankly would not see myself voting yes on it. No matter, I mean, okay, if we're in the trillions, Elon, sure, you know, but I would definitely have been much happier with a much stronger deal that perhaps had more solid protections in that space. Okay, we're going to put some data centers in here, but we're going to have parkway. We're going to have set-asides for land. We're going to have perhaps a utility tax rebate for the residents of Marseilles who are struggling. They're going to take ownership of Nabisco and they're going to put it into clean energy or something, put solar on it or what have you.
Yeah.
We could have thought in those terms. And, you know, and darndest thing, if I still would have voted no, then I think people would have been a little bit more angry at me because, hey, Mike, you know, you said, hey, I want a better deal, and they gave it to you. But we didn't. We pretty much took what they were offering, and again, without public input.
Yeah.
And that was just the wrong way of going about it. And again, so even though, I think it's called the St. Peter's Aquifer, I really, and the loss of farmland really bothers me. You know, if you're going to put large solar farms in the desert, that makes perfect sense to me. You know, I have solar on my roof. I love the idea of putting solar on rooftops, solar garages. I'm very pro renewable energy. The hydrogen plant itself, I was very fine with. You know, being attached to the new plant. But a data center, you know, and like you, I do realize, you know, I'm not Amish. We're online. You know, we're doing a podcast. I understand. I love perplexity. I love asking it questions. But I also do understand that there's a cost to it, just like anything we do.
Yeah, like water.
Yeah, I think 6 gallons of water for every search. So it's not that we can live without these things, but we can put them in more responsible places. That is I think it's called bottom land. I mean, that's particularly good land that they were using. That now can be a whole host of things. they just don't apparently won't be a farm.
Yep.
You know, and so another thing I'm worried about is large scale agribusiness. You know, the Chinese and other nations buying up farmland in the United States. So now within the city limits, that's less of a purview for us.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that I appreciate that there are economic needs that a community has. And some project will be good to go there, but let's not do it on the backs of our water availability.
Right.
Let's not do it on the backs of our sustainability. You know, the thing that I told the Planning Commission was that, you know, one reason I live here is it's affordable. Another reason I live here is it's friendly. Another reason I live here is there's natural beauty.
It's becoming unaffordable.
That's exactly right. And all three of those things are compromised. Mm-hmm. You know, a large scale development on roads that are not up to snuff, on driving over bridges that I hear regularly, it's not looking great. You know, and we already have a housing crunch as it is. Mm-hmm. You know, it's going to make it less affordable. It makes it less friendly. Lots of traffic kind of coming in and out of this. And then it would ruin the natural beauty of that area. So it goes to the issue, and I suppose that process and policy are related because bad process makes bad policy.
Well, that's one thing too that I really want to speak to is what really grinds my gears is when policies are made on behalf of people, impacting people they know nothing about.